Welcome to the Hindu editorial analysis on 4th May 2022. The first editorial I am going to discuss today is titled The Court's Burden. The editorial discusses the outcome of a joint conference between the Chief Justices of States and the State Chief Ministers on the point of the proposal for a National Judicial Infrastructure Corporation. The proposal for a National Judicial Infrastructure Corporation was proposed by none other than the Chief Justice of India, Justice N.V. Ramana. The proposal also included forming corresponding bodies at the state level. Naturally, a question arises to the mind of the readers as to what is this judicial infrastructure and why a National Judicial Infrastructure Corporation is needed. The judicial infrastructure includes the physical premises of courts, tribunals, lawyers' chambers, and so on. The infrastructure must be proper in courts so that it helps the timely dispensation of justice. The infrastructure implies physical infrastructure. It is well established fact that a proper working condition is necessary for efficient operation of any work for the case. During the pandemic, the courts were forced to go digital. However, it is a well-known fact digital infrastructure in courts is far from satisfactory. It is a shocking revelation that only one-third of lower courts have proper digital infrastructure. The digital infrastructure in court implies the presence of a computer at judge's dais with video conferencing facility. The next question arises in mind: why such judicial infrastructure is lagging in India? The simple answer is that there is no budgeting for the judicial branch in India. This is gross neglect of judiciary and has been historically repeated. The judicial wing is the most critical wing of the government. The government, as the executive, always resorts to burden the judiciary with complex issues which it cannot resolve. The judiciary is also the only ray of hope for the poor and marginalized sections of population. It is shocking to note that the budgetary allocations of union and states on judiciary is still below 1% of GDP. It is ridiculous to note that there is a steep cut in 2021 budgetary allocations for the judiciary, a reduction of rupees 228 crores from 2020 budget. The steep cut of rupees 2 billion comes at a time when pandemic hit judiciary system mostly needs the funds. The major problem contributing to the crisis is the underutilization of funds by the states from the centrally sponsored schemes to address the infrastructure woes. As per the estimates, only rupees 84.9 crores out of rupees 981.98 crores from the centrally sponsored funds has been utilized in 2019-20. Therefore, it can be seen that 91% of the money is unused. The states are lackadaisical in its approach to utilize central schemes, as there is a stipulation that 40% of the amount contributed by the center has to come from the states as matching grant. The response from the states has been tepid on this matching grant. The only significant name in the list on this effort on matching grant is Maharashtra. That too, only 2% being its contribution. The facts and figures are staggering. The proposal by the Chief Justice of India of setting up a National Judicial Infrastructure Corporation to act as a coordinating agency is the right medicine for the malaise the judiciary is being placed in respect of infrastructure today. The question is that will the National Judicial Infrastructure Corporation work? The corporation is threatening the federalism of the country. India is a federal nation. Why should a national body impose its conditions on states? The next issue is that the centrally sponsored scheme funding requires tedious paperwork on issues of land acquisition, tendering, and award of contracts, site inspections, etc. The Chief Justice suggests representation of judges of Supreme Court and High Courts in the corporation. The question is whether the judges leave the duty of handling of mounting backlog of cases and take up the role of deciding on infrastructure issues. It sounds impractical as inclusion of judges in the corporation will make their work more burdensome. The editorial suggests finding a common concern as judicial infrastructure is a necessity among the executive represented by state chief ministers and chief justices of high courts and officials from both the executive and judiciary. The first in line to break the impasse must be bringing in a blueprint of the National Judicial Infrastructure Commission. The second article is titled Weighing the Evidence and discusses on the Supreme Court order upholding an individual's right to refuse vaccination. The apex court quipped that the evidence must support the government's move to curtail the individual liberty to refuse vaccination. The current evidence suggests that the unvaccinated people are not likely to spread the coronavirus infection. It can be understood that the apex court order is hinging on certain riders. The rider is that the government can continue to impose restrictions if concrete emerging evidence in coming days suggests spread of COVID-19 by unvaccinated people. This is where the science and laws of the country must work together. The order of the top court clearly suggests government's response to scientific evidence emerging now and then. The revisiting of government orders should be based on evidence of spread by unvaccinated for the limited purpose of a specific period. The order underlines the fact that the people cannot be forced on vaccination if they wish not to be vaccinated unless there is reasonable requirement to force vaccination. The article also points out that at least 75% of Indians have got at least one vaccine shot. The studies have proved that the people in the West are getting infected with highly transmittable variants even after being vaccinated by booster doses. Hence, the demand for booster doses has fallen. The vaccine hesitancy can be observed now as people are in the wait for more effective vaccines. The vaccine hesitancy means that the people are hesitant to be vaccinated with booster doses now. The normal life has opened up across India and still the daily infections are at a low figure. The article concludes by underscoring the need of scientific evidence to match policy decision on vaccination. The third article is titled Bill Ascent or a delay and the governor's options and discusses on the constitutionality of a governor's refusal to assent to a state bill after it has been passed without accepting the amendments suggested by the governor when it was first presented before him after passing. The context for this discussion is the governor of Tamil Nadu's refusal to assent to NEET bill passed by the Tamil Nadu's assembly for more than 2 months. The governor is sitting on the bill for more than 2 months now, citing there is no provision in the constitution as to time limit within which the governor should assent to a bill. The article discusses at length the Article 200 of the Indian Constitution. The reference is made to Article 154, Sub-Article 1 of the Constitution, where it is clearly stated that the governor has the executive powers of the state. However, the executive powers must be exercised only on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. This article goes on to settle the position by referring to Apex Court's order on Shamsi Singh versus State of Punjab in 1974. Dr. Ambedkar's explanation on this aspect in the Constituent Assembly, the Sarkaria Commission report, and the 2016 Apex Order of the Constitutional Bench of the Top Court in Naban Rabia case. The article explains in detail the Article 200 of the Constitution as to options available to a governor when a bill passed by the Assembly is presented to him. The Article 200 provides four alternative courses, out of which one of the alternatives is that which is relevant to the case is governor is constitutionally bound to give his assent to a bill after it has been passed by the assembly without taking into account the amendment suggested by him. In a democratic country with federalism, sitting on a bill for a longer period defeats the mandate of the democratically elected government's executive wish to pass a bill for the benefit of its people. The article concludes by saying that the immunity granted to a governor in Article 361 must not be misused, as he is not answerable to court for exercise of his powers, is not applicable if the governor acts against the spirit of the Constitution. The fourth article is titled A Buyout That Could Make a Public Square Private. It speaks on the subscription based conversion of Twitter's access to the public post Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter. Elon Musk has acquired a stake in Twitter for $46.5 billion and wishes to convert the public limited company into a private limited company. The Twitter is feared to become more centralized with this buyout. The Twitter is currently a public good with about 330 million monthly active users, including politicians, celebrities, activists, and scholars. The short messaging platform is in favor with the Indian government ministries and departments to announce policies ahead of a notification. The taxation returns deadlines are extended towards the last hour of the deadline day by Twitter message. The media uses Twitter for concise representation of time to time news reports. The article expounds that the skeptics fear that the excludability wave in Twitter is going to come. The subscription based use proposed by Elon Musk suggests the excludability is said to be the policy. Excludability implies restricting the use of Twitter only to those who pay a fee for their services. The Twitter is a classic example of non compliance in India, as it never adheres to Information Technology Rules 2021. The article apprehends the post acquisition Twitter will ever care to consider the laws of the land in its compliance. The Google model on sponsored advertisements is a classic example of making available its search engine free to users on the strength of its $200 billion annual revenue. The huge advertisement revenue is a leverage to Google to subsidize its services free to even the most unprivileged sections of society. This is a model which is a good example to be imbibed.